Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episode 3 of HBO's Task, entitled Nobody's Stronger Than Forgiveness. So this episode kicks off with a really strong scene between Maeve and Robbie, and they're sitting in the car, and Robbie explains why he's been robbing Jason in the Dark Hearts. He goes back to Billy's funeral and how Jason had the nerve to shake his hand and hug Maeve even after what he had done to Robbie's brother and Maeve's father. Robbie doesn't just want revenge, though. Like, he admits he's tired of living this same mediocre and inadequate life, and he wants to provide for his kids, especially since they keep asking about, I shouldn't be laughing because it's shitty, but they keep asking him about, when is mom coming back, and he doesn't even have an answer. To that point, we don't even have an answer. Like, I'm curious if we're going to learn what happened with his wife. But aside from that, I thought this was a really powerful moment, and it instantly sets the tone for this episode and highlights how this show continues to be about the damage done to these families and the trauma that they've suffered. All of the stuff about moles and the cops trying to catch Robbie and Cliff, all that's just the means through which we're examining the impact of these traumas on these families. And the performances of these actors are elevating what is already an absolutely incredible script. But moving on, though, Tom and his crew bring Kathleen up to speed. And I love the line about her press conference coming up and how she doesn't want to be up there looking like a smacked ass. I don't know how this show managed to interject something that funny into such grim material, but for whatever reason, that line really worked. And I just envisioned like somebody being embarrassed and not just turning red, but actually looking like an ass. Also, the negotiations in this episode were fascinating. Remember last week, Perry and Jason discussed the idea of asking Freddie, the leader of the Dominican gang, to give them a heads up if someone tries to sell them their stolen drugs. Or sells him their stolen drugs, sorry. Perry said it'd cost them, and he was right. When they do meet with Freddie, they tell him that they'll give him 25% if he notifies them. But Freddie asked for 50. And why does he ask for 50? Well, Freddie proceeds to tell this brutal story about being jumped by a biker gang just out of like sheer racism. They knocked out 6 of his teeth, fractured his jaw. Then he said that they pulled their cocks out, and I braced for the worst here. But fortunately for Freddie, what I thought was going to happen is not what happened. They merely pissed on him, and I thought that story is about to go in a much worse direction. But the best part, though, is what Freddie points out the racism that still persists today. He says that even though his drugs are more pure and cheaper than the biker gang's drugs, the biker people still pay extra for weak shit from them because they won't just buy from a person of color. They'd rather just stick with buying from the white people. So his conclusion is, unless he gets 50%, he's going to piss all over their ugly bearded faces. The Dark Hearts don't respond before the scene cuts, but I think it's safe to assume they probably accepted the terms. This is one of my favorite exchanges of the episode, but let me know what you thought about Freddie's story and his demand in the comments. Like, do you think the Dark Hearts caved? I think they probably did. But did you think that story was going to end in a far worse way than how it actually did? Let me know what you thought. Anyway. Back on Robbie's side of things, his mysterious connect is revealed. It turns out that it was, in fact, Jason's girl. I said, I think after episode 1, I was like, I bet it's either the girl that Jason was in the bed with or the girl from the bar. And it ended up being Jason's girl. So her name's Erin. She warns Robbie about Jason meeting with Freddie, which means he can't move the drugs right now. And then we get an even bigger reveal. She was sleeping with Billy and apparently was in love with him. So now we can see the full picture, right? She was with Jason. She fucked Billy. Jason found out, killed Billy. And then that was the club violation that sparked everything. Robbie's revenge robberies, all that. And we also learned how Robbie felt about the aftermath of that in the opening scene with Maeve in the car. What I like here is that the show, it doesn't just simply put Jason into a villain box. I mean, he is the bad guy. Don't get me wrong, the bad guy. But his story and what he dealt with is messy and complicated, just like everyone else on this show. Essentially, they're giving the bad guy a little bit of a backstory and a motivation too. And I like that. Whether or not you agree with his actions is irrelevant. It's still all about the impact of these decisions and the traumas that these families have experienced, or in this case, a biker family. Unrelated, here's another one for the comments. Do you think anything is going to happen with with Deer before the season is over? The reason I ask, there's a small but intriguing Deer motif that seems to be creeping in, and I can't quite wrap my head around it. Last week, when Robbie and Sam were talking, they're looking out the window. Sam said that he would warn Deer about crossing the street because that's how they keep dying. Then this week, while getting a swim lesson from Maeve, he shouts out at some deer to stay out of the road or they're going to get hurt. And it seems small now, but, one mention of deer getting hit by cars is a throwaway line. I think I even called it like a mostly throwaway conversation when I talked about that conversation. But a second mention of deer getting hit by cars feels like foreshadowing in some kind of way. I don't know. But let me know what you think in the comments, what that could look like. There's not a random thought I had. It was in my notes, but randomly came up at this time. Now, here's where I get a little bit frustrated, and I mean that, I swear to God, in the most complimentary way I can possibly convey frustration. It's like one of those things where like this show is so fucking good and performing at such a high level that I wish I had gotten this, but I instead got this. Ethan and Emily only got one scene together. We meet Ethan in this scene, and him and Emily talk about things that we already know, like how he cut his hair, how he got skinny. We learned that last week when the lawyer was prepping the family for how he was going to look at sentencing. And then we learned things that we could logically deduce, like how Ethan's weighed down by guilt and resigned to whatever happens to him because he blames himself for everything. Like, we could already piece that together too, just from him pleading guilty and all that kind of stuff. So, like, this subplot with Ethan, Emily, and how Ethan's actions have impacted that family, for me, is deeply compelling. Honestly, much more so than watching Cliff and Robbie try to find someone to sell these drugs to. My frustration that I mentioned is I just really wish this episode had given Ethan's trauma more room to breathe instead of just that one scene. Hopefully the show is going to pay me back next week, though, by spending a lot of time on like the sentencing hearing or something like that. Speaking of Cliff and Robbie, though, they meet with Ray and Shelley. So Ray is a connect from Cliff's prison days, and Cliff thinks that Ray can help them move the drugs. Right off top, the show makes it clear that Ray and Shelley are junkies and that Ray is probably physically abusive of Shelley. Cliff tells Ray they'll give him a cut if he can help them move to 12 kilos. Initially, Ray recommends Freddie, which everybody has already conveyed with one another that selling to Freddie is not going to work. Then he recommends somebody named Lee Whitehead. We don't end up meeting this person or hear any other mention of them but for the rest of the episode, but kind of explains why when we see what later happens. But meanwhile, Lizzie and Aaliyah go to Peach's job to ask for any information on Sam. Just pass out flyers like, hey, if you've seen this kid, let us know. One of the workers looks like he has something to say, but that he don't want to be a snitch in the moment. And that does turn out to be true. He later meets with them and tells him that Peaches was bragging about robbing houses with Cliff, and Cliff's the guy that works at the sanitation. He's just giving all sorts of valuable information. And that valuable information is also likely going to lead to them learning that the brother of the guy that Jason killed, who Tom's been told about, that brother also works for the sanitation company with Cliff. That's undoubtedly going to also lead them to Robbie. So the entire task force, they head to Cliff's house, and there are already two people inside, which confused the shit out of me at that time. I was so shocked that there were already people in the house that I could barely focus on their attempt to secure the house. I'm just thinking, like, who the fuck was that, though? But a couple of things come out of this scene. One, we learned that the two people there were Ray and Shelley looking to steal the drugs that Cliff wanted them to sell, or help them sell. So that's probably why we don't see Lee Whitehead. They had no intention of allowing those drugs to see Lee Whitehead. But, well, it might happen. Maybe we'll see him next week. And secondly, we learned that something is up with Lizzie. She seemed shook from the moment that they got there, and her inability to act almost cost Tom his life. And he was still badly hurt, and it almost cost her own life. She was only saved because of Grasso. Apropos of that, I thought that scene in the bar where the other cops were making fun of Lizzie and Grasso defended her was super corny. Like, don't do that again. The relationship, again, I say this all the time. Don't shoehorn in relationships just to fucking do it. And this thing's like 6 or 7 episodes. I don't need two people to be fucking just to be fucking. Like, if Lizzie and Grasso were gonna have some kind of connection, I hope it's because one of them's trying to work the other one over. Because that situation was super corny. But back to Lizzie. The show, I think, is clearly painting her as the most volatile member of the task force. You know, we've seen her arguing on the phone. Now she's all shook up during this scene. The whole situation with, not reading the original file. She just doesn't seem fully focused on the task at hand, no pun intended. And the show's also confirmed that there is a mole within the task force. Lizzie seems like the obvious choice here, which to me all but confirms that she's not the mole. My money's on Grasso. I think he's probably trying to work her over. Like in the smacked ass scene, for instance, he arrives late and he blames it on like getting coffee or some shit. He was probably meeting with the Dark Hearts at fucking Tim Hortons, and he probably knows him from like his days as fucking DJ or something like that. I'm joking, but like I'm telling you, it's gonna be something stupid like that. Something that we're never meant to guess. Meanwhile, Perry continues hunting for the snitch. He asked the woman from the bar, D, that's the other woman that I thought might have been the snitch, but by now we know it's Aaron. He asked her about it, and she throws Shane under the bus. And Shane is that one, I think he's like the sergeant at arms for the group. And we know Shane isn't the snitch. We know it's Aaron. But Shane has been behaving strangely. D says that in this scene that Shane's wife noted that he's behaving strangely, and we, the audience, saw Perry and Jason observing him. I think it actually might have just been Perry, but observing Shane to be behaving strangely as well. But if Aaron is Robbie's connect and not Shane, what the fuck is Shane up to? And why is he behaving so strangely? Also, does Dee know what Aaron is doing and just like threw Shane under the bus to protect her? Or was she giving like her real opinion? Like, yeah, I heard Shane's on some shit. Like, maybe you should talk to him. Like, remember last week, she tried to talk to Aaron about whatever was going on, but then she got real quiet and walked away when another woman came up to like the bar or the food table. I don't remember where the fuck they were at. But for the third time in this video, let me know what you think in the comments about what's going on with Dee and what's going on with Shane. The episode ends with another strong family beat. Sarah's marriage seems to be in a tough place. Tom's caught between duty and forgiveness, and Emily overhears him admit to not wanting Ethan in the house and being unable to forgive him, which, I mean, understandable, but that's gotta hurt for Emily to hear. These family dynamics, Tom's inability to reconcile his grief with Ethan's role in his wife's death, are what I find to be most gripping about this show. Honestly, that whole subplot, I think, is where the heart of the show lies. But overall, I thought, again, another great episode, though for me, probably the least of the three so far. But again, any three collection of something has to have a best one and a least one. It just has to happen. The least one can still be an A++++. And this was still a great episode, still captivating, still packed with reveals, but the emphasis on Robbie and Cliff moving drugs, it just doesn't quite hold my attention the way that the trauma among Tom's family does. And that subplot didn't get a lot this week, and Robbie and Cliff moving the drugs did. That said, the whole mole hunt, Freddy's negotiations, and the tangled mess of relationships, it keeps this show compelling. So let me know what you thought in the comments. Like the channel, subscribe, share to your social media, join the Discord, join the conversation, and until next week, peace.